Hi, Fiona.
Hello. Hi, morning.
Morning.
What-
We're on different shaped cups today.
Yes. Although I think last week I didn't have a cup for the first time. Oops, I
Yeah.
forgot my cup. Yeah, no, today we have a coffee cup
Yes.
because today is a coffee break.
Yes.
And I'm asking you some questions today. So you can
Feel
you can
nervous.
impress us with 100 tips for, no, don't worry, not 100, but as many as possible, at least five. Let's do between 5 and 10 tips. And I want you to tell us about, well, this is tea with fee and tea. And T is going to tell us about TTT because it was just, I couldn't let that one go by. So teacher talking time, not just time though, quality.
Yeah.
So what would your tips be for quality TTT? T?
That is a very good question. What would my tips be?
Hmm.
Um, First of all, as much as possible, try and drop the commentating. We see it a lot with when we're doing initial training courses. And I think it became a bit of an issue again with moving online, that people felt they needed to fill the silence
Ah,
when
okay,
they were
right. Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah.
things. And I still do find myself doing it like, just let me shut my screen a second here. Okay, click on that. Da, da, da. And I mean, yes, it's kind of natural English. Um, but there's no harm in a little bit of silence in the classroom. The students know you're setting something up. You don't need to walk them through the
Yes.
stages of,
But do you think, I mean, I know I chat an awful lot in these things, but in my actual classroom, my students do most of the talking. Um, and so particularly early in the course, there are long silences, and I'm quite happy. I'm quite silence tolerant, shall we say. I'll sit and just wait because I know that sooner or later somebody will speak.
hmm hmm
And if I hurry them, it doesn't help anybody, you know. So it's showing that there's space. But do you think that online, because we haven't got the body language and the presence, and so for me in my physical classroom, it's quite easy for me to just sort of sit and go, it's okay, kind of thing. And then if somebody else you do it, it's all right, we'll just go. Um, but we don't, but the turn taking thing is different anyway in a Zoom room.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you think? What do you
Yeah,
think?
no, I mean, I think I definitely do a lot more nominating online than perhaps I would do in the physical classroom, just because it avoids that you ask a question and you kind of give them a moment, and then there's that awkward moment where nobody knows who's going to speak. They can't kind of, like you say, there's a lot of those visual cues that we have in the physical
Yeah.
classroom. And then you end up with two people talking over each other. And so then you kind of manage it and go, oh no, hang on, well, what do you want to say? And then
Yeah, because in the physical you can because we tend to make a physical movement before we speak for tone taking. For example, a bunch of Brits, this is something I literally studied when I lived in Spain because there's a huge difference between Spanish social groups and British social groups. And British people will tend to shift position momentarily
Mm.
just before they speak in a
Mhm,
group.
mhm.
So if you think about it, if we're all sitting, if there's like six of us sitting around the table and you're listening to somebody, then just as you're about to express your opinion, you'll tend to kind of go. And there's a very vague shift, and everybody sees it in peripheral vision, and that's like a um. But even that, in this little rectangular world, there's not much. You don't really see that, and you don't have the peripheral vision thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, hmm.
No, it's true. It's true.
And
Yeah.
what about when you? Because I mean, pardon me, I have to nominate anyway because that's just the way that the classes work.
Culture. Yeah.
They won't necessarily fill the gap because there's a different sort of social hierarchy in the book. So I tend to nominate, but it's that leaving space and time for students to formulate their answer rather than leaping in.
Yep.
You know how most, not most, but a lot of early stage teachers will say, um, I don't know, who wrote Pride and Prejudice? Anyone? Anyone? Francisco? No? Or rather than just saying, who wrote Pride and Prejudice? Anyone? You know, the weight, the not.
The waiting time. Yeah.
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 How important do you think it is to wait? Do you think that's different online and face to face?
It's vital to wait because, like you say, it's not only the time to formulate the answer, but it's perhaps time as well to understand the question and what sort of answer the question is requiring of you,
Mm.
and how long your answer is going to be. Um, and I think as well, unfortunately, for our students, even if it's a yes, no question, we often want them to expand on it anyway. So it's not just, yeah, it's like, because. Um, but so, yeah, so definitely wait time is essential. And I think it's something like they need a minimum of 7 seconds, and we tend to give them three. I've probably
Mm.
got my numbers all wrong there, but we traditionally give learners a lot less time than they need to respond because I think, that going back to that idea of a safe, welcoming environment, how long does a pause become uncomfortable and start making students feel nervous that they don't respond and things like that? Um, so yeah, so definitely giving them the wait time. Um, and in terms of it being similar or different in the online environment, I still do give them wait time. Um, And I think again, once you've built the rapport with the learners,
Yeah.
they know that they feel comfortable with that silence as well.
I also find not just comfortable, it becomes almost a joke. If at the beginning of the course I do like a long pause, waiting for somebody to answer, I do tend to not have to. So there's a cultural thing here as well that I do leave the space, but then I'll often have to say, "Oh, how about you or you?" and nominate a couple of people, and then still wait. But I do make it clear to my students that I will wait until somebody answers.
Hmm.
And then at the beginning, they won't quite believe not quite believe it, but they won't. So there'll be a long, almost awkward pause.
Hmm.
And that might happen twice, but it won't happen three times because as soon as they see that you will wait and that will give them time to think, but that you're not going to say anything until somebody's spoken, then they'll start to laugh, and the slightly more confident ones will begin to speak and fill the gap. And the less confident ones, they still feel like they're getting time to think. And
No.
so you can almost feel everybody begin to go, oh.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that first time you do it, it's the opposite because everybody's sitting there going, oh no, there's this big long silence and nobody's saying anything. Oh, and there's a kind of a like a group panic, and then somebody will step into the breach,
Hmm.
literally. But after that, it becomes like a comfort zone that they know that they have the time, but they it's a fun, I can't really explain it, but it works really effectively. And it's like a kind of learner training. It's how you set up the routines in the classroom. And it's saying, I am going to give you literally all the time that you need, and I'm not going to speak. Um, and it will start being the more confident ones who fill the gap, but then others do as well because then they know that they're getting the time,
Hmm. Yeah.
and and it just sort of relaxes the whole, should we say, vibe of the classroom because yeah, they understand that they're being given what they need to speak.
Hmm.
What about
Hmm.
quality as well? And
So,
do you think there is, sorry, and do you think there is justification for the teacher being the one that talks the most, or shouldn't talk at all, or
well, I
what's your
mean that,
thinking on that?
that's it. This is where we get into like the balance between teacher talk time and teacher talk quality,
Mm,
because we can be a very useful source of language for our learners as well.
yeah,
And I teach quite a lot of one-to-ones, so I do talk quite a lot.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but a couple of things that I've noticed myself doing, because I hadn't had a lot of experience teaching one-to-ones, I'd often just taught in groups. And so one thing that I've noticed is when when a learner doesn't, so when I ask a question and I kind of I know the learner doesn't quite understand something, whether it's they don't fully understand the question or they don't fully understand how to start their answer or something. Like
okay,
in that case, rather than repeating the question or rephrasing the question, I'll give an example. So I'm trying to think of one that happened recently. Um, like, oh, can you think of a time when you had a bad experience on holiday? And sometimes with that, like they need time to think, well, what do we mean by a bad experience? And so I'll give them a kind of a minute or so, and then if I can see they're not quite kind of
yeah,
jumping into answer, I'll go, well, so for example, a few years ago, da 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 da, and then generally from that they can springboard and give their own idea as well.
yeah. They need quite a lot. I mean, I would need thinking time for that one in my own language, bad experience, and then you go through. Okay, there was that one, there was that one. Now, which one do I want to share? There's all kinds
Yeah.
of, or can't really think of anything right now. One of these. Yeah,
But
that's a
I
tricky
think that's
one.
it as well. Like as teachers, when we get to know our learners, we can gauge by their facial expression what's
Yeah.
going through their mind as well. Like, is it, oh, that's a good question. Let me think about that. Uh, or is
Hmm.
it a, mm, mm, yeah.
Yeah, I find, I mean, I was having a conversation yesterday, um, and he couldn't think of a word, but I didn't want to jump in and offer because I wasn't completely sure that I was anticipating the meaning that he was looking for. You see what I mean? So then I waited for ages, but I waited for too long. And he was going, come on, give me a word. And I was like, oh, sorry. It is, as you say, it's a balance. I was
Mhm.
leaving like, but I was thinking, I'm not, I can't read his mind. I'm not completely sure what he wants to say here. So I was thinking, probably overthinking teacher style, thinking, oh, I don't want to leap in and just complete his sentences in a way. And then eventually he sort of went, come on, I need a word.
Yeah,
That's where you're
but
going, okay, well, what does this word need to mean?
we were chatting about that. I was chatting about that with a friend the other day and saying, again, finding that balance of TTTTTQ. That's something that you would naturally do in your first language if you were having a
Yeah,
conversation with a friend and the friend was kind of searching for a friend for a word, or just kind of paused and you answered because it shows that you're following the conversation. It's a
yeah,
very natural way that we do it.
it
And I
is.
think as teachers, we tend
But
to
it's ex
avoid doing it.
no, and it's extremely irritating though when a friend in inverted commas finishes your sentences for you. So, so that I wouldn't do that as a friend. I wouldn't do it as a teacher either. But he was wanting me to, and I was like, I can't. What were you actually trying to say? But that was useful because then he had to paraphrase to me in English,
Mhm.
and then I could give him the word. But he was expecting me to finish his sentence for him.
No.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't, that's not the way I roll.
Mm. I've got an Iranian student at the moment who's absolutely wonderful, and she said to me the other day, like, she'd had a teacher before who was also either Iranian or spoke Persian, um, and so she said, I like my lessons with you because you don't answer for me, and I was like, yeah, I have absolutely no knowledge of Persian. If
Yeah.
you don't know a word, I can't help you, I'm afraid. And so it's really good because she was she was trying to explain like a population reduction. And so
Um,
she was saying, and when you go somewhere and then they build houses and all the animals die, they kill the animals. And I was like, oh, do you mean like, and she was like, yes, yes.
Gosh, well, my chap yesterday was looking for self-aggrandizement, so that wasn't quite what. Yeah, so there's me going, not sure quite where we're going with this one, but yeah, that's what he wanted. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah. And what about, so I'm going to cough. Pardon me. What about so when, if ever, do you think that the teacher should do all, in inverted commas, the talking?
Um, So, well, I don't know if this is quite answering the question, but another thing that I think is really important that tends not to happen in one-to-one situations is that the learner asks questions of the teacher.
Yeah.
I think, we tend to, I mean, generally as teachers, we tend to ask a lot of questions anyway, but at least if learners are doing things in pairs, there's more likelihood that they're going to be asking follow-up questions and things like that. And that's actually a really natural skill that we have in English conversation, even if it's things like, oh, and then what happened? And that's perhaps sometimes lost. So I have been recently as well getting my students, I've said like, okay, next 10 minutes, ask me questions
Yeah.
in the one-to-one. But I think it's a valid thing in the group class as well, just for them to have that practice of asking questions. So then I would respond naturally, like give them a full answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Um,
but I mean more, you know how the traditional teaching is the teacher stands and
Chalk and
talks.
talk.
Exactly, yeah. Do you think that that is ever a valid approach?
I think it can be.
Mm.
I think nowadays we do a lot of guided discovery activities where we get the learners, we show them lots of examples of the language and then they work together to try and work out the rules, um, which is a great approach if, and then the kind of the teacher's there to facilitate. Um, but I do feel that maybe there are occasions when it's just easy for the teacher to go, this is this, this is this, this is how it works.
Mm.
Away we go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just the time saving and
Yeah, well that's it. I remember God, this must be 30 or more years ago. It was back when I did my diploma. And it was actually one of my work colleagues who'd been the model, given the model lesson. So we were discussing inductive and deductive learning. And so this colleague of mine had given, should we call it an A star lesson in observation the year before. And so my trainer was sort of using this as an example. And because I say that it was one of my colleagues because I kind of inside vision, I'd seen it from his side as well. He told me about how it had gone. And it was, I don't remember exactly the context, but he'd been teaching some. grammar point. But instead of teaching it, given examples, and then you got the students to ask him a load of questions. And it was like that yes, no, 20 questions game of, I don't know, is it past? Yes. Is it this? Yes, no, whatever. And all he'd done was say yes, no, yes, no. And it was to teach this grammar point. And it was, I don't know, something like used to versus simple past, that kind of thing. And and this was being sort of given as being, oh, absolutely brilliant grammar lesson, whatever. But that teacher had said to him afterwards, well, how did you feel about it? He said, yeah, but he said, I could have done the same material in 5 minutes and it took half an hour or whatever. And then some of the students afterwards had said, yeah, can we not do that again? Because they had also felt that, particularly as it was grammar rather than vocabulary that you can then get on and use it. It was understanding a concept that could have been explained to them like dunk, and they'd had to go through this like 20 or 30-minute fun, yeah, methodologically sound, etc. thing of, yeah, if you ask questions, more processing, more learning. But they had just wanted to cut to the chase. So it's a bit like the don't use translation in a class, explain stuff. Well, if you don't speak Farsi or whatever, you're fine. But if you speak the language and you know that a table is a mess, and that's it, it's just an awful lot
Yeah,
quicker to,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
And it can reduce student frustration. In my context, we have to give lectures. So there is an element of, and so a lot of it I'll do is discovery learning, all the students go in, research and present, but I'll give a bit. But I also think it's valid listening practice because they're then doing IELTS. So if I've got to stand and talk about um, how the color purple dye was discovered, instead of a whole ask me a bunch of questions, I just
Hmm.
tell them and then say, now here's your topic, yours, here, you go off and give a little. So it is listening practice.
Yep, yep,
So long as it's like not 80% of the class, but 20 or something. Yeah.
yep.
Any more tips regarding TTT from tea, but with
Um,
coffee, not with tea? Sorry.
yeah. Um, I mean,
But what about speaking slow? Sorry, I'm thinking, what about the speed of delivery or,
grading your language as
yeah, or
well.
any of that? I mean, I suppose when we speak normal conversation, like I just did it, I said, I suppose, like, do you try and cut that stuff out in class? Do you speak more slowly? Do you alter your accent? No, you don't, but I do a little bit.
I mean, definitely in terms of working with different learners, so kind of my B1-ish learners, it's still like relatively natural. I'll say things like, um, but I do notice that I slow it down a little bit, try and grade it a little bit more, whereas then when I'm with my C1s, C2s, it's just waffle. And I teach them words like waffle.
Waffle, yeah.
So yeah, so definitely grading, but not to an extent where it becomes unnatural. I still like to feel like I'm having a natural conversation with a learner. Um, Again, different perhaps with younger learners who are less willing to not understand things, if that makes sense. Like, I don't like with my adults, particularly because they tend to be living in English speaking countries, so they're surrounded by not understanding everything all the time anyway.
Okay.
Um, they're more, they don't feel they have to understand everything, so I can ask them things with a bit of an idiom or a phrasal verb, and then they'll kind of get the gist. Whereas I think with younger learners, much clearer language is sometimes better. although they're supposedly sponges, but they'll go, I don't know. And, well, don't worry if you don't. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we've been chatting for far too long, and I did
Oh.
not get to 100 tips. But that's fine. 100 tips would be far too long anyway. Okay, so I will see you again next week
You will
with a cup of tea.
with a cup of tea, yeah, because the coffee's too short.